So now zombies have the power of super strength. Sure, I'll go with it. Tonight's review is on Dead Snow 2, and first of all, for those of you who don't speak Norwegian and don't like to read subtitles, you're actually in luck. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, the first Dead Snow was in the Norwegian language with English subtitles, but the second film isn't. It takes place in Norway and it features Norwegian characters, but everybody speaks English. Points for consistency. Anyway, Dead Snow 2 Red vs. Dead follows the only surviving character from the first movie. At the end of that movie, he cut off his own arm after being bitten by a Nazi zombie to prevent himself from becoming a zombie. And after somebody finds his unconscious body in this movie, some doctors sew another arm onto him, which turns out to be an arm from one of the Nazi zombies. Don't you hate it when that happens? The bad thing about his new arm is that it has a mind of its own. I mean, it's not as if it has the mind of its former master, where it's almost like Dr. Strangelove making involuntary Nazi salutes, which would have been pretty funny on its own, but whenever our hero gets stressed about something, carnage ensues. Meanwhile, the Nazi zombies aren't quite dead yet. They're still walking, and they've got some unfinished business to settle. Also, it turns out that their colonel is a White Walker because every time one of his soldiers kills someone, he has the power to bring them back from the dead and continue building his army, which is terrifying. So, in regards to how I actually feel about this movie being in English when the first movie wasn't, it did take me a while to get used to, but once I was able to become invested in the story, it wasn't much of a bother. One major nitpick is that the main character is played by a Norwegian actor, and whenever he's uttering these lines in English, his acting does come off as a little wooden at times, but thankfully the movie offers more supporting characters who are not only better performers, but also better comedic actors. Something I was on board with for sure is that this movie is actually more of a comedy than it is a horror movie, and it makes sense when your premise involves Nazi zombies. Not only that, but how serious should you take it when the main character has a crazy zombie arm? As for the supporting characters, they're these cops who honestly don't offer much to the plot. If they had been taken out, it wouldn't have really affected anything story-wise, but I am thankful that they were included because they had some of the funniest moments in the movie. There's also a team of these American zombie hunters who the main character makes friends with, and for me, they're a little bit of a mixed bag. There's three of them, and two of them remain consistently funny throughout, and I really like them, but then there's this other one that's a huge Star Wars fan, and that's pretty much her entire personality. Every single joke that she contributes to the movie is a Star Wars reference, and there's really nothing clever about it. Every time she's just like, blah blah blah, Star Wars reference. And if Star Wars references are enough to get a laugh out of you, then that's awesome, but personally, I was just rolling my eyes every single time. As well as being a pretty funny comedy, though, this movie turns out to be a pretty sweet action movie as well. There is some pretty decent choreography early on, like when the main character wakes up for the first time and his crazy arm starts going off, but then during the final act of the film, there's this big battle scene involving the Nazi zombies, and it not only feels very gritty, but it's filmed in a very epic way. Considering that Marvel usually recruits these independent directors to make their big budget blockbusters, I wouldn't be surprised if Tommy Wirkola's name ended up popping up in the MCU, especially now that he proves he can direct action really well. But don't get me wrong, Dead Snow 2 is not a family-friendly Marvel movie by any stretch. When you see the Nazis going across the land and coming across people, mowing them down, it gets pretty damn graphic at times, and everybody is a target, which means all age groups. They don't give a shit. So, in the end, Dead Snow 2 is not a perfect movie. Again, there's the consistency issue with the English language, and there are some jokes in it that fall flat, but at the same time, I still had a great time watching it, and it's a very fun and entertaining horror comedy. So, if you've got a sixth sense of humor, I would recommend watching it. I hope y'all have a good one.